Hello, you're listening to the Para-Pup podcast, the podcast for paramedics in training. When life is on the line, paramedics answer the call. This podcast provides future EMS providers with information on current and trending topics to be equipped with the knowledge to save a life. Do you have what it takes? I'm your host, paramedic Clark Agnes. Welcome to the first podcast, the Para-Pup podcast, the podcast for future paramedics. My name is Clark, and today in episode 1, we'll be talking about leadership in EMS. I have amongst myself right now a group of future paramedic practitioners and some current field providers. We're going to go around the room quickly and let them do some introductions.
My name is Anthony Aber. I'm a KCC paramedic student.
My name is Sam Allendra. I'm a KCC paramedic student.
My name's Kate Damero. I'm also a KCC paramedic student.
My name is Nate Pawlowski. I'm also a paramedic student.
My name is Daryl Marley. I am a current adjunct instructor for the paramedic program and an EMS practitioner of almost 13 years.
Well, together we have assembled a number of interesting topics to discuss in the trends of EMS leadership that we face right now. I want to start us off with a quote in regards to leadership. It goes a little something like this. A leader is one who knows the way, one who goes the way, and one who shows the way. That's truly what an effective leader is in my mind. And so the first question I want to propose to the group here is, what makes effective leaders? What makes someone an excellent leader?
All right. Well, definitely a good question. I think from my standpoint, in my view, what makes someone a good leader is someone who can effectively listen. I know everyone wants to lead and wants to have their voice heard, but I think a tribute for a leader is someone who definitely can listen and really hear what people are saying to them and what they need to hear.
And I mean, I think that's really well said. I also agree with that. But to kind of expand on that point, I feel like a leader is someone who is willing to go into the trenches with you and help you through everything, especially if you have a difficult call or you're really struggling with something. They're willing to be there and show empathy and help you.
A great leader to me is someone who can communicate throughout a whole team no matter how they're feeling. If you're feeling mad, if you're feeling angry, frustrated, you get through the call and you don't knock each other down or you don't knock your teammates down during the call. You stand up for yourself, admit what you've done wrong.
A good leader to me is someone who has ethos that they follow. I come from a military background and we're instilled 7 different ethos that we do. And at first also you need to be a good follower in order to be a good leader, so that way you know how those who are below you, how they do their job, and you also teach them how to do your job so they can become leaders later on.
I definitely think there's some core concepts that all of you have mentioned to a certain extent, and those things focus in on effective communication, making sure that with that communication we work to close the loop, that we're all using a shared mental model, a model that we all know that we're working towards the same end goal, the same target, so we can optimize our resources and continue to be effective in the care that we provide to our patients. So communication is a core attribute of that. I also think that another attribute is as Nate had mentioned, is listening. The ability to close your mouth and open your ears, to be able to hear what your other team members or your other partners in crime in whatever situation, EMS or in life, it's going to provide you with the opportunity to really reflect on what's being said, and it creates a environment that allows for opinions and thoughts to be shared freely without any type of punitive action. We have to get away from a hierarchy in EMS, and I definitely think as future paramedics, we all know that out there are paragods, right?
Yeah.
We say this is the Para-Pup podcast, right? And you guys are the future providers that are coming up. But there are paragods out there, and they are dangerous because they know the right way, and they're the only one that knows the right way, and they're not going to tell you if you're right or wrong. They're going to assume that you're wrong.
And with the whole the paragod thing, that's you want to have confidence and you want to be confident in yourself, and I also think that's something along the lines with being a good leader. Not only the knowledge, but the confidence to have and make those right decisions, and those treatment decisions that you have when you have a patient in the back of the truck. So definitely there's a bit of a difference between having confidence and also being one of those stigmas of being a paragod, because I don't think anyone ever really wants to be one. It's just something that kind of we get complacent with what we do, and I think being confident is much better than being that stigma of paragod.
Now, Daryl, you're currently taking classes to work on your bachelor's degree, and one of the classes that you're in right now is the fundamentals of leadership. Do you want to talk about some of the things, the topic areas that you're focusing on in your undergraduate studies?
So, right now, just read a book called Love Works, 7 Principles for Effective Leaders. And one of the main attributes it talks about is love the verb and how it is an action and how you can lead with that. It doesn't mean that you're soft or that you're going to kind of stand in the background. It still means you need to be strong, but it doesn't mean that you're angry or use a lot of negative emotion to lead. Our goal is to build people up. You can do that by being patient, by being kind, self-control. Some of those attributes we seem to skip over in EMS. I want to expand a little bit on talking or about listening. A lot of people listen so they can have a response. When it really comes to being a good leader and listening, you're listening for understanding. You're trying to understand what another person is saying and not just kind of get stuck and start thinking about what response you want to give. You want to be able to understand somebody first. We don't treat somebody before we have an idea or a differential diagnosis of what we think is going wrong. We're not just going to start throwing medicines or putting IVs in people if we don't have a clue of what's going on. And in order to do that, we have to understand first. So I totally agree with both Nate and Clark, and leadership is a lot about listening for understanding, taking that time to understand what somebody else is trying to say through communication. So using some of those, both of those principles, I think really makes an effective leader.
So we had clinicals yesterday, and I talked to Dr. Clay Mishler of Bronson Kalamazoo Emergency Medicine on the topic of teamwork and leadership. He stated having a designated leader is very important, so when I get the patient, I can be told what interventions will be done in the field. Teamwork is very important when a person's life is at stake. Using closed-loop communication throughout the process is very important and will help leadership identify what has been done for the patient and what needs to still happen. The way that EMS communicates in the field to the hospital is very important because knowing that what has been done. I then asked Dr. Mishler about running on field calls with MSU1 in Kalamazoo County. I asked if there was a cardiac arrest what was the best way to run the code. Dr. Mishler stated there needs to be one person running the code, and it could be someone on the airway, anybody. The person running the code also needs to be clear and be in charge and ready to give a very short report to the oncoming physicians if one shows on scene. I want to be able to know what has been done to the patient instead of going in a circle around the patient asking each person, what have you done? Dr. Mishler also added, if there's no communication, then smooth running of a call. There's no teamwork or leadership. There's no teamwork or leadership. It's more everyone for themselves. And like Daryl brings up a good point. You need to be able to identify yourself as the leader, but also using closed-loop communication. That way everybody on the team knows what's going on. And make sure somebody understands you, make sure someone has heard you, have them repeat back the information even if they've said it already. Clark has put us on it, and even all of our different instructors, and I'm sure you guys can agree with me that it's the biggest way to run a call and to be the best provider you can be, is closed-loop communication.
And there's research that backs that, especially in the cardiac arrest. If you look at what the American Heart Association is doing with their research for pit crew style CPR or high quality effective team CPR, and the need for continuous compressions or to have at least a chest compression fraction of at least 60, if not more. High performance teams do that, and in all those models, you're going to find that your team leader is in the mix of what with what everything is going on. However, they're still on the sidelines having a good overview of what everyone is doing, and they're reaching out to get feedback. They're trying to prompt good closed loop communication, like you had mentioned, Sam. It's that aspects that allow for a code to go effectively. Now, we all know in EMS we're not likely to run a mega code or cardiac arrest with 6 people every single time. But as far as a foundation for training, I think it's critical that you know the different roles and that you learn to master each role as an individual concept, so that way you can put them all together when the time comes where you're going to need to play the role of 4 or 5 different people. And the other part of that is to make sure as a leader is not to lose sight. We've all heard the saying of they can't see the forest through the trees. Well, that's the same concept when it comes to leadership. If you're so task saturated, if you are so involved in an individual task like administering a medication or placing an endotracheal tube or gathering a medical history, you may not be able to see everything that's going on in situational awareness, right? So it's definitely important that we take those aspects into consideration with our leadership. Don't become task saturated.
Being a paramedic leader, in adding to what Clark said, really comes down to seeing the big picture. Not becoming task saturated, knowing what direction that you're going to take this call. And to do that, you have to see the big picture. Now, there are lots of details that do make up that big picture, and it depends on what type of person you are, what comes naturally for you. Some people will see the details before they can get the big picture, and some people like to see the big picture and know how to fill in that picture with the details. However you do it best, you still need to have an understanding of the picture in the whole. So being able to lead and take somebody and take your crew in a direction is really what makes a paramedic an effective leader.
So with the leader, I mentioned earlier, I feel leaders should have certain sets of ethos. With my military background, from the beginning, day one, basic training, I don't know if it's the same with like the Marine Corps, but in the Army, you learn about the 7 warrior ethos, but you can use these same things in everyday life. First one's loyalty. Be loyal to yourself and your fellow employee. You can show loyalty to your fellow employees and they will show it to you back. Like be kind to them, help them whenever they need it. Duty, that's the second one. It's our duty to help people. It's what we're in this for. It's also your duty to help train those below you who are new and also learn something new from those who've been here a while. Respect. Not only is that towards your fellow employee, this is, again, all this is going towards being a good leader. Respect your fellow employees. Also respect your patients' privacy. Whatever you do, show them respect and you will be shown respect. Selfless service. Well, that kind of is a little bit self-explanatory. Most people aren't really in this for the money. We're in this to help save lives. It's what we do. Honor. Yeah, I really can't put one towards that, but honor is kind of along the lines of showing, like, don't talk down about people. If you show people that you're okay with them, with like honoring their respects and everything, they'll also show you the same courtesy. Integrity. This one's like I feel is the most important. Own up to what you do. Even if you made a mistake, own up to it. Don't try and hide it. Don't lie. Especially to patients. I know we also get a lot in when we're out in the field, patients go, well, am I gonna die? Well, we really can't tell that. But you can tell them I'm gonna do everything I can to help them. Then not only that, if you're above somebody, if you show them integrity and you actually tell them the truth the way it is, they'll show you the same back. They'll do the same thing for you. And personal courage, that one kind of shown with us. Don't be willing to do something and tell people to do something that you haven't done already. So if you're on a call, you've done it as a young paramedic, or even those who are older like Clark and Daryl who've been doing this for a while, they'll ask us to do something, but it's only because they've done it themselves. And they're not afraid to do it, and don't be afraid to also show that you're willing to do it. So if you follow those 7, I feel like you're going to be a really good leader.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. We've kind of laid the foundation for what we think is core concepts or core values of leaders. Everything from communication to listening to the ethos that we talk about with the military. All these things are really important. But let's really talk about how this is in EMS. In EMS, what do we do with leadership? How does leadership affect us in our daily lives? And the question I want to pose here is, what is the good, the bad, and the ugly that you guys have seen, without using specifics, right? But what that you have seen in leadership, the goods, the bads, and the uglies.
I guess, I haven't been doing this too long yet. I've been here, working in the field for about 1.5 years now, and some of the good things I've seen is I've really worked with a lot of good paramedics out there that are able to see everything as a whole. And I know we've touched on it a little earlier today, but they've seen the big picture, and they've understood that just jumping right into stuff it is probably not the best idea and the best thing to do. I've seen some paramedics that I've worked with that have been newer and may not have had the best leadership aspects and qualities. Sometimes they can get kind of arrogant. Back to the whole paragod thing, they can be kind of arrogant. And I really think that's it doesn't paint a good picture to the patient, other agencies you may be working with, whether it's fire or police. And I think there's a lot of areas it could go, but those are a few things that I've personally seen working in the field. I hope the good outweighs the bad, and I'm really optimistic about it, and having the leadership qualities for everyone.
I've been working in the field approximately 4 years now. I currently work at 3 different companies, so I have a pretty good handle on, what I like in a partner and what I don't like in a partner. And I've worked with some fantastic paramedics and some that we just don't see eye to eye. But that being said, when it came to patient care, we had that shared mental model, and we would do whatever we could and whatever we had to take care of the best, or do the best care for that patient. I feel like at its core, leadership is about that shared mental model and voicing your opinion and seeing what the team members of your crew think you could do and what could be improved on, and how you could ultimately have the best outcome possible for your patient.
I think one of the things that come to mind that's ugly, without giving any specific circumstances, conflict.
Yeah.
There are going to be times where your leadership abilities, and we've talked a lot about leadership with like how to orchestrate a crew and your partners and that, but a leader to me goes beyond that, goes beyond what's happening with your other responders that are on scene, right? That's kind of part of that. But then even your family members, your bystanders, a leader is going to be able to take people that are in the environment and empower them to take initiative on their own, right? That they're gonna create and foster an environment that's going to allow for them to rise to the challenge that's before them. And conflict is probably the biggest hurdle that we come across, because there will be times where you won't see eye to eye with your partner, and that's okay, but there has to be a constructive way to work through that, right? To overcome that conflict in a way that's going to put the patient's interest best first. We're always being a patient advocate, that we're being safe, and that safety is on the mindset for everything that we do. And by those few concepts, it's going to allow you to overcome conflict or disagreements in patient care, conflict with family members, right? That you may see that where emotions run high on some of our scenes. That to me is some of the ugly that we typically see, and I think you're right. On the average, the majority of paramedics always rise to that challenge. But the struggle with leadership is that you're dealt cards that you're not going to expect. We don't know what the next call is going to be, and so when we respond to that situation, we've got to to coin the phrase, medic up, step up to the situation that's at hand, and approach it in a way that's going to move things forward, not delay or stall or frustrate others if it's not necessary, or if it's not a help to the patient.
So let's be honest, some of the bad medics that we've seen and worked with lead with their negative emotions. The come to work, they've had, not a lot of sleep, they've been working, multiple days in a row, and they lead with their emotions, their negative emotions, and it makes for a rough shift, and it makes for rough calls. Those good medics that we've worked with, they don't let the negative emotions bother them as much, and they try and foster positive emotions. And to do that, they have to take care of themselves in the process so that they can help take care of the team. You can't expect to have, sleepless night after sleepless night and come to work and be ready to foster a positive environment. So taking, those leaders that take care of themselves and spend that time, that's also very important.
So I kind of want to move us along here. I think we've talked about what leadership is, that's good, that's bad, the ugly moments that we occasionally see. We've kind of established what makes an effective leader. The last question I want to propose to the group is, what can you as future EMS providers, as future EMS practitioners, what can you do to improve leadership? And when I pose that question, I'm not talking about you and necessarily just your leadership, but within your organization, within your crew, within your relations with the hospitals and other area facilities and responders. What can you do to improve the culture of leadership, or even the culture of teamwork, because that's part of leadership?
I think something, to go along with that, that's really kind of cool that we've done in our sim lab, not necessarily there, but our lab class is we've brought in first responders. And especially when we did a mock MCI drill, we brought in our local first responders all over with the fire department, and we tried to get police. And I thought it was interesting because it kind of gets them the idea of what it's like to work with the new providers and, with the future medics and everything. And so it gets them a taste of it, and we get to work with them, see how it's going to be like working with them. And I feel like it kind of gives us that shared mental model. And it was, I think, beneficial for everyone in the party.
I guess along with that, I guess seeing the big picture, understanding where other people are coming from, and we get called, it's usually an emergency and people are needing help. I think a big thing we can do as a whole in the whole field of EMS, to harbor, maybe a little better leadership here and there, whether it's in your agency, it's people you work with, I think is just being optimistic, being positive, making sure you're listening to everybody, whether that's the patient, family members who are concerned, or it's your local first responder agency or police department. Everyone's has a role to play in helping better patient outcomes. So I think staying positive, being optimistic, really listening is a good way or a good start to better the leadership aspect in the field of EMS.
The one thing that I want to add to this for improving leadership is know your job, know your role, and know what you can do to assist others in their jobs. Think about when you're on the truck, you rely on your partner, right? That's part of your leadership aspect. Same thing goes when you're on duty and you're working at the station or you're working on the truck. Take pride in what you have. Know what you need to do. Know what you might be able to do to improve circumstances, and I think that's what allows for you to shine as a natural leader.
To go with that, knowing your job, I feel a good leader is the kind of person who not only do they know their job, they teach their job to those below them. So don't forget where you came from. We're basics to begin, right? Well, you're becoming a medic, you want to make sure your basics are good basic and want to encourage them to become a medic. Teach them how to become a medic, how to do the job, and kind of show them things. And then not only that, learn the job of the person above you. So you've got those critical care medics, you've also got those senior medics, and you've got even your supervisors. Learn how to do their job so you can make their life easier so they can also become a good leader.
Also, you need to know how to communicate. Even when you're frustrated, you're running your 15th call of your 12-hour shift. You need to know how to communicate and not get your feelings in front or in way of your communication. You need to know on how to handle it, how to communicate with each other on EMS, and the way of great leadership. The way I learned to be a leader was through scouts, attending National Youth Leadership Training. They always use the EDGE method. Explain, demonstrate, guide, and enable. They explained to us what we're doing. They showed us how we're going to do it. They guided us on doing it, and then they let us do it on our own. That's the best way to do something that would help them in the future. So, I mean, just different areas of expertise.
So I want to move us to our next section, which is nuggets of knowledge. Each of you have prepared a piece of information that you want to share in regards to leadership. Just a brief thing that you think wraps up what good leadership should be. What is the key takeaway from our podcast today?
Mine kind of goes along with the 7 I introduced. Respect. I think a leader is somebody who is respectful to others, and I feel if you show somebody respect, they should show it back. Kind of the old golden rule you were taught as a kid.
I'd say just go back to the EDGE method. If you need to look it up, look through it. It's how, I mean, Boy Scouts aren't run by adults. It's run by youth. It's run by leadership. And that's how EMS is run. Yeah, we're adults, but we're all, if you think about it, kids. Yes, we have our supervisors, but it's only you and your partner on the truck at that point. So you need to know how to explain everything to your partner. That may be a lower licensure level.
Being a leader means not being afraid to step up, but it also means not being afraid to take a step back and ask questions, especially if you're not sure what to do next, or teach your basic partner.
I'll just share a little quote. Big sports fan. This is from Michael Jordan. He said, "Some people want it to happen, some wish it to happen, and others make it happen." I really think that goes a long way with becoming a good leader. Is some people, oh yeah, I wish it would happen. I wish it would do this. I think people with good leadership aspects, they make it happen. They have an obstacle they need to overcome, and they persevere through it. So I just wanted to share a little quote from that with you guys.
So 2 things real quick. One quote. It's not who you are on the inside, but what you do that defines you. Doesn't mean that those 2 things are mutually exclusive. Who you are should line up with what you do. And as a leader, don't afraid to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable, showing people who you are, will really gain their trust. And trust is very important when you're working one-on-one with your partner, when you're working with a group of firefighters, MFRs, doctors, nurses, ER techs, everybody in the medical field. We're here for one goal, and that's to take care of our patients. Don't be afraid to show who you are, whether you've done a good job, whether you've made a mistake. Vulnerability is also very key.
So I think that we really have hit the basis of what leadership is, or what leadership should be, and even how to help us progress in the steps that we need to improve our culture in EMS. EMS is a very unique field. It's you see this in a lot of occupational careers, but we have a tendency in EMS to eat our young, and that doesn't help us grow as a profession. I agree with Kate's statement that leadership is a responsibility, and what an awesome responsibility it is. And it's a role that needs to be led from the trenches. I had a partner that I worked with for a long time that was a military man as well, and he had the very simple saying as a good leader leads from the trenches. They're not afraid to get dirty. They're not afraid to do the work. They've done the work. They know the job, and they're willing to help motivate and empower the things that the people around you need for you all to be successful, to work towards that common goal. Well, thanks, dear podcast listeners. Make sure to check us out later. And with that, another great episode of Para-Pup Podcast bites the dust. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below. And remember, stretcher jockeys, if it's wet, sticky, and not yours, don't touch it. See you next time.